Ambassador James Mitchell walked into the massive meeting hall where representatives from hundreds of different alien species gathered. The room was enormous, with seats that changed shape to fit creatures of all sizes. Some delegates looked like giant crystals that glowed within a light, others resembled massive insects with clicking mandibles, and a few were floating energy beings that sparkled in the air. James felt very small among them all, but he had an important job to do. He wore his best diplomatic uniform, dark blue with gold trim, representing Earth and all of humanity. His hands were slightly damp with nervous sweat, but his voice would be steady. It had to be. The translation machines hummed quietly around the room, turning his words into sounds and thoughts that every species could understand. James had practiced this speech dozens of times, but now that the moment was here, the weight of it pressed down on his shoulders like a heavy blanket. Honored friends and allies, James began, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. For 3 years now, humanity has been proud to call ourselves members of this great galactic community. We have followed every rule you have taught us. We have signed every peace treaty you have placed before us. We have tried very hard to be good neighbors to all of you. Some of the alien delegates shifted in their seats. The massive Thurian ambassador, who looked like a walking mountain made of grey stone, rumbled softly. The delicate, butterfly-like Etherians fluttered their translucent wings with what might have been impatience. Admiral Rebecca Stone watched from the special viewing area reserved for Earth's military leaders. She was an older woman with silver hair pulled back in a tight bun and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. She had fought in Earth's last great war 20 years ago, before humanity had learned they were not alone in the universe. She knew things about human warfare that most people preferred to forget. Rebecca had argued against this moment in meeting after meeting with Earth's leaders. Once we tell them what we're really capable of, she had warned, we can never take those words back. But the politicians had made their choice, and now James had to deliver the message that would change everything. We have been peaceful because we chose to be peaceful, James continued. We have been gentle because we decided that gentleness was the right path. But recent events have made it clear that some of you have misunderstood our behavior. In the viewing area, General William Carter sat next to Admiral Stone. He was a younger man with dark hair and worried eyes. He had been reviewing intelligence reports for weeks that showed certain alien factions were beginning to see humanity as weak, as easy targets. Pirates had attacked human merchant ships. Border disputes were becoming more aggressive. Some species were testing human resolve, pushing boundaries to see how far they could go. The truth is, James said, and now his voice carried a harder edge, humanity has been holding back. We have been limiting ourselves out of respect for the peace that we all cherish. The chamber grew quieter. Even the constant background chatter of various alien languages faded as universal translators worked overtime to make sure every being understood exactly what the human was saying. Ambassador Gorth of the Thurians, whose species had been warriors for thousands of years, leaned forward in his massive stone chair. Human, he said in a voice like grinding boulders, are you making threats in this sacred hall of peace? James looked directly at the enormous alien, meeting what passed for his eyes without flinching. No, Ambassador Gorth. I am not threatening anyone. I am giving you all a warning, as friends should do for each other when danger approaches. The butterfly-like Etherian delegate, whose name was a musical sound that humans could not pronounce, spoke in chimes that the translator turned into words. What manner of warning, small human? Your species has been among us such a short time. What could you possibly warn us about? James took a deep breath. This was the moment that would define humanity's relationship with the galaxy for generations to come. I am warning you that if humanity is pushed too far, if our people are threatened, if our colonies are attacked, we will no longer hold ourselves back. We will no longer limit our response. We will no longer fight with one hand tied behind our backs. Captain Michael Hayes, watching from Earth via a secure communication link, felt his stomach tighten. He commanded a patrol ship on the edge of human space, where tensions had been rising for months. He had seen the intelligence reports about aggressive alien movements near human colonies. He knew this moment had been building for a long time. You see, James continued, every species in this hall evolved on worlds where you had to share space with other intelligent beings. You learned cooperation because you had to. You learned restraint because your survival depended on getting along with others. Scholar Venth, an ancient crystalline being whose people kept the historical records for the entire galaxy, began to pulse with an uncomfortable light. He was one of the few beings in the chamber who was beginning to understand where this was going. Earth was different, James said simply. Only one species survived to reach the stars. We had no one to teach us limits except ourselves. What you have seen of humanity these past 3 years, our diplomacy, our patience, our careful responses to conflict, these are not our natural state. These are choices we made because we want to be worthy of the peace you welcomed us into. The hall was completely silent now except for the soft humming of life support systems and translation matrices. But if that peace is threatened, James concluded, if innocent humans are hurt because others mistake our restraint for weakness, then we will show you what humanity looks like when we stop holding back. We pray to whatever gods each of our species honor that this warning will be enough, and that such a demonstration will never become necessary. As James walked away from the speaking platform, most of the assembled delegates dismissed his words as the empty posturing of a young species trying to seem important. But in the ancient archives, Scullaventh was already pulling up historical files about species that had evolved alone on their worlds. What he found there made his crystalline form flicker with growing alarm. High Commander Crax stood on the command bridge of his massive warship, watching the flames rise from the human colony below. The planet New Bristol had been home to 50,000 humans just 6 hours ago. Now smoke filled the sky and emergency signals echoed weakly through space. Crax was a Zelthak, standing nearly 8 feet tall with thick gray skin and 4 powerful arms. His species had conquered 3-star systems over the past 1,000 years through superior firepower and ruthless tactics. They were known throughout the galaxy as fierce warriors who showed no mercy to their enemies. Report, Crax demanded, his voice like grinding metal. His second-in-command, a younger Zelthak named Voss, checked the tactical displays. The human defense stations are destroyed. Their patrol ships were eliminated within the first hour. Casualties among their civilian population are estimated at 12,000 and rising. Crax nodded with satisfaction. The humans had given their little warning to the Galactic Council 3 months ago, but words were cheap. Action was what mattered, and the Zelthak had decided to test whether humanity would back up their threats with real force. Any response from other human colonies or their home world? Crax asked. Nothing significant, Voss replied. A few distress calls, some evacuation ships fleeing the system. Exactly what we expected from a weak species trying to sound tough. Down on the planet's surface, Captain Michael Hayes crawled through the wreckage of what had been the colony's main shopping district. His left arm hung useless at his side, broken when his command post had collapsed under bombardment. Blood trickled down his face from a deep cut on his forehead, but he kept moving. The smell of smoke and worse things filled his nose as he searched for survivors. Behind him, fires burned out of control in buildings that had housed families just hours before. Children's toys lay scattered among the debris, and Michael tried not to think about what had happened to their owners. His communication device crackled to life with static-filled voices. Captain Hayes, this is Colonel Thompson aboard the rescue vessel Mercy. We're in orbit now, starting evacuation procedures. Michael pressed the device closer to his ear. Copy that, Colonel. The eastern residential sector is completely gone. Western industrial zone is burning but might have survivors in the underground shelters. Understood. Hayes, I need your assessment for Earth Command. How bad is it down there? Michael looked around at the destruction that surrounded him. A school playground lay in ruins nearby, its colorful equipment twisted into unrecognizable metal shapes. The community center where his neighbors had held birthday parties and holiday celebrations was now a pile of smoking rubble. Tell them we lost everything that mattered, Michael said quietly. Tell them the Zelthak didn't just attack our defenses. They targeted hospitals, schools, civilian shelters. They wanted to cause as much suffering as possible. Colonel Sarah Thompson, orbiting high above in her rescue ship, felt her hands clench into fists as she listened to the reports coming in from the surface. She had been a soldier for 15 years, had seen combat in the border conflicts that happened before humanity joined the galactic community. But this was different. This was deliberate cruelty aimed at innocent people. Captain Hayes, she said into her communicator, Earth Command is asking for your recommendation. What do you think our response should be? Michael was quiet for a long moment. He was looking at the ruins of the daycare center where his 4-year-old daughter Emma had played with her friends every morning. The building was gone, replaced by a crater that still glowed with heat from the Zelthak weapons. Emma had been visiting her grandmother on Earth when the attack came, but dozens of other children had not been so lucky. Tell Earth Command that the Zelthak wanted to test human resolve, Michael finally answered. Tell them that the test is over. Tell them it's time to stop holding back. 3 days later, Admiral Rebecca Stone stood in the deepest military command center beneath the city of Geneva on Earth. The room had been built 50 years ago but had never been used for its intended purpose. Massive screens lined the walls, showing star maps, fleet positions, and weapon system status displays that had been dark since the day they were installed. General William Carter addressed the emergency assembly of Earth's military leaders and government representatives. Men and women in uniform sat next to politicians and diplomats, all of them looking at displays that showed the true scope of humanity's hidden military capabilities. Operation Unleash has been authorized by unanimous vote, General Carter announced. All artificial constraints on human military response are now removed. Admiral Stone, you have full command authority over all Sol Defense Network assets and associated systems. Admiral Stone stepped forward, her silver hair catching the light from the tactical displays. For 3 years, she had watched humanity play the role of peaceful junior members of the galactic community. She had helped design the careful responses and measured reactions that made other species think humans were naturally gentle. Understood, General, she said. All ghost fleets are to activate immediately. All hidden installations are to come online. All special operations units are cleared for unrestricted engagement. Around the room, military officers began working at control panels that had been covered with dust covers for years. Deep in space, automated systems that had waited patiently in the darkness began to wake up. Weapons platforms hidden inside asteroids powered up their engines. Entire fleets that had been disguised as mining operations dropped their false identities and revealed their true nature. The message that went out to Zelthak High Command was simple and direct: warning acknowledged. Restraints removed. High Commander Krax received that message while celebrating his easy victory with his senior officers. He read it twice, then laughed loudly. More empty words from a defeated species, he told his staff. Prepare the fleet to move on the next human system. We'll have them all conquered within a month. He had no idea that everything he thought he knew about humanity was about to change forever. High Commander Krax stared at his tactical display screen with growing confusion. Just yesterday, his sensors had shown only 3 small human defense stations scattered across their territory. Now, dozens of massive military installations appeared on his screens as if they had materialized out of nothing. This is impossible, Krax growled, his forearms gesturing angrily at the display. How did they hide so much firepower? Our intelligence report said the humans barely had enough ships to patrol their own borders. His tactical officer, a nervous young Zelthak named Ren, checked and rechecked his instruments. Sir, I'm reading the signals correctly. These aren't new constructions. The energy signatures suggest some of these installations have been there for decades. They were just hidden somehow. Krax's gray skin darkened with rage. Hidden how? You can't hide entire military bases. Actually, sir, Ren said quietly, it appears they can. Look at these readings from the asteroid field in Sector 7. What we thought was a mining operation is actually a fortress built inside a hollowed-out asteroid. And this moon in Sector 12, it's not a moon at all. It's an artificial construct disguised to look like a natural satellite. Far across space, Admiral Rebecca Stone stood on the bridge of the HMS Defiance, humanity's most powerful warship. For 3 years, it had been disguised as a deep space research vessel, quietly studying cosmic radiation while its true weapons systems remained hidden behind false hull plating. All ghost fleets, report status, Admiral Stone spoke into her communication device. Captain David Reynolds, her former student and now commander of the stealth carrier Phantom's Edge, responded first. Ghost Fleet Alpha is fully operational, Admiral. All cloaking systems are offline, revealing our true numbers. The Zelthak still think they are fighting 3-star systems. They have no idea we've been fortifying 47 different locations for the past 50 years. Captain Jennifer Walsh commanded Ghost Fleet Beta from her flagship, the Dreadnought Silent Thunder. We're in position behind Zelthak supply lines, Admiral. Their fleet is powerful, but they depend on regular supply convoys to keep fighting. Without fuel and ammunition, even the mightiest warship becomes helpless. Admiral Stone nodded with grim satisfaction. Commence Operation Stranglehold. Remember, we're not just fighting their military forces. We're fighting their ability to make war at all. The human assault began unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. While the Zelthak prepared for traditional fleet battles with ships lined up in formation firing at each other across space, human forces struck everywhere at once with completely different tactics. Colonel Emma Watson led a team of Special Forces soldiers aboard a captured Zelthak supply ship. They had spent weeks learning Zelthak language and customs, disguising themselves as alien traders. Now they moved through enemy space stations not to capture them, but to turn the station's own security systems against their crews. Target the environmental controls first, Emma whispered to her team as they crept through dark corridors. Then communications, then power distribution. Make them think their own equipment is failing. Within hours, 3 major Zelthak command stations reported critical system failures. Life support became unreliable, forcing crews to evacuate to smaller ships. Communication networks crashed randomly, leaving military units unable to coordinate with each other. Power grids failed in cascade patterns that looked like natural equipment breakdowns rather than sabotage. Captain Michael Hayes, still recovering from his injuries on New Bristol, commanded a squadron of fast attack ships designed for hit-and-run tactics. Unlike the massive warships that other species used for direct combat, human vessels were smaller, faster, and designed to strike without warning. Remember, Michael told his pilots, we're not here to have honorable duels. We're here to win. Hit their supply convoys, their communication relays, their fuel depots. Make them afraid to leave their main bases. His squadron struck a Zelthak convoy carrying ammunition to the front lines. The attack lasted only minutes, but when it was over, the convoy was destroyed and the human ships had vanished back into the darkness of space before enemy reinforcements could arrive. High Commander Krax found himself fighting an enemy that refused to follow any recognized rules of warfare. When he sent his fleets to engage human forces in direct combat, the humans disappeared. When he tried to protect his supply lines, human ships appeared from nowhere to destroy his convoys. When he attempted to coordinate attacks, his communication systems failed at crucial moments. They are not fighting like warriors, Krax complained to his staff during an emergency meeting. They attack civilian infrastructure, target supply ships, and run away from fair fights. This is not honorable combat. Commander Voss looked at the tactical reports spread across the table. Sir, honor may not matter if we lose. In the past week, we've lost 60% of our supply capacity, 40% of our communication network, and our forward bases are reporting equipment failures faster than we can repair them. Meanwhile, other human forces were demonstrating capabilities that shocked the galactic community. Captain Robert Clark's engineering corps didn't just attack enemy installations, they captured them intact and turned them into human bases within days. His teams had studied Zelthak technology for years, learning how to operate and modify enemy equipment better than the Zelthak themselves. The key, Captain Clark explained to his engineers, is that we've been preparing for this possibility since the day we joined the galactic community. While everyone else thought we were just peaceful traders and diplomats, we were learning everything we could about their technology, their tactics, and their weaknesses. Admiral Stone watched the reports flowing in from across Zelthak space. The enemy fleet that had seemed so powerful just days ago was now scattered, confused, and running short of everything they needed to continue fighting. Supply lines were cut, communications were disrupted, and their soldiers were beginning to wonder if their leaders had made a terrible mistake. Status report, she requested. Zelthak resistance is collapsing faster than our projections anticipated, reported General Carter from Earth. Their military doctrine assumed they would face an enemy that fights like they do. They have no procedures for dealing with the kind of warfare we're conducting. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's 3 years of peaceful behavior had been a choice, not a limitation. Scholar Ventha's crystalline body pulsed with urgent flashes of light as he hurried through the ancient archives beneath the Galactic Council building. His species, the Keepers, had maintained these records for thousands of years, collecting information about every known civilization in the galaxy. Now, for the first time in his long life, he was searching desperately for answers that might prevent a catastrophe. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called after disturbing reports arrived from Zelthak space. The mighty hegemony that had dominated 3 star systems for over a millennium was somehow losing a war against humanity in just 2 weeks. This should have been impossible. Ancient Keeper Tom Harrison, whose people were among the oldest spacefaring species in the galaxy, worked alongside Venth in the archives. His aged hands trembled slightly as he pulled up files that hadn't been accessed in centuries. "Here," Tom said, his voice heavy with growing dread. "The evolutionary patterns we've been looking for. Look at these records, Venth." Scholar Venth examined the data that appeared on the holographic displays around them. Every species in the galactic community had evolved on worlds where multiple intelligent beings had developed together. The Thurians had shared their planet with 3 other sapient species. The Etherians had evolved alongside 7 different intelligent races. Even the aggressive Zelthak had originally competed with 2 other warrior species on their home world. They all learned to coexist, Venth whispered, his crystalline form flickering with realization. Every single species had to develop cooperation and restraint, or they would have destroyed themselves before reaching space. Tom Harrison nodded grimly. Every species except one. In the main council chamber, Ambassador Catherine Brooks represented humanity while James Mitchell remained on Earth coordinating the war effort. She sat quietly in the human delegation area, watching as panic spread through the assembled aliens. Reports continued streaming in about the collapse of Zelthak forces, and nobody could understand how it was happening so quickly. The massive Thurian Ambassador Gorth stood at the speaking platform, his stone-like form radiating confusion and growing fear. "This makes no sense," he declared. "The Zelthak have conquered entire star systems. Their military doctrine has been studied and respected for centuries. How are they being defeated by a species that has been in space for barely 50 years? Ambassador Brooks listened as species after species offered their theories. Some suggested that humanity must have secret alien allies. Others proposed that humans had discovered some new superweapon. A few even wondered if the reports from Zelthak space were somehow false. Scholar Venth entered the chamber with Tom Harrison, both of them carrying data tablets filled with their research. The ancient keeper approached the speaking platform with slow, deliberate steps that commanded attention from every being present. "Honored delegates," Tom Harrison began, his voice carrying the weight of millennia, "Scholar Venth and I have discovered something in the archives that explains what we are witnessing." The chamber fell silent except for the quiet humming of translation devices working to convert his words into hundreds of different languages and thought patterns. "Every species represented in this council evolved on worlds shared with other intelligent beings," Tom continued. "We learned cooperation because we had to survive alongside competitors who were equally intelligent. We developed rules of warfare, concepts of honor in battle, and restraint in victory because our species would face extinction if we fought too effectively." Ambassador Gorth shifted uneasily in his massive chair. "What are you suggesting, Ancient One?" Scholar Venth stepped forward, his crystalline body pulsing with nervous light. "We are suggesting that Earth was unique in the galaxy. Only one intelligent species survived to develop space travel. They conquered an entire planet with no equals to teach them limits." The Etherian delegate fluttered her delicate wings with agitation. "But they have been so peaceful, so diplomatic. For 3 years they have followed every treaty, respected every boundary." "Yes," Tom Harrison replied. "But that was their choice, not their nature. What we interpreted as natural gentleness was actually deliberate restraint. They chose to limit themselves because they understood what they were capable of if they did not." Captain Sarah Murphy's voice suddenly crackled through the chamber's emergency communication system from the front lines. "Galactic Council, this is Human Colonial Defense Command. I am transmitting from the Zelthak border region." Ambassador Brooks activated the main display screen, and Captain Murphy's face appeared before the assembled delegates. Behind her, the bridge of her ship showed tactical displays filled with collapsed Zelthak positions. "Council members," Captain Murphy reported, "Zelthak High Command has just sent an unconditional surrender request through all available channels. They are asking for immediate humanitarian assistance for their remaining population centers." The chamber erupted in shocked sounds from hundreds of different species. The Zelthak hegemony had never surrendered to anyone in their 1,000-year history of conquest. "Additionally," Captain Murphy continued, "they are requesting that human forces take over administration of their former territories until stable governments can be established. They claim their existing command structure has completely collapsed." Ambassador Gorth's stone-like features somehow managed to express disbelief. "The Zelthak are asking the humans to rule over them." "Not rule, Ambassador," Captain Murphy clarified. "They want us to help them rebuild. Apparently, their entire social system was based on military dominance. Without their military superiority, they don't know how to govern themselves." Scholar Venth turned to address the council directly. "This is what we fail to understand about humanity. They don't fight to conquer. They fight to protect. When they told us they were holding back, they meant they were protecting us from themselves." Tom Harrison nodded slowly. "A species that evolved alone on their world, with no natural limits except those they chose to accept. They could have destroyed the Zelthak completely, but instead they are offering to help them rebuild." Ambassador Brooks stood to address the council. "Humanity never wanted to be warriors in this galaxy. We wanted to be part of something peaceful and beautiful. But some of you mistook our restraint for weakness, and now you've seen what we become when peace fails." The truth settled over the council chamber like a heavy blanket. They had been living alongside apex predators who chose to be gentle neighbors instead of galactic conquerors. 6 months after the war ended, Ambassador James Mitchell walked through the central plaza of what used to be called Zelthak Prime, the capital world of the fallen hegemony. The planet had been renamed Haven by its new democratic government, and the changes were remarkable to see. Where massive military statues once stood showing Zelthak warriors in threatening poses, there were now playgrounds where children of different species played together. The old parade grounds that had been used for military displays were converted into parks with gardens and walking paths. Schools and hospitals replaced weapons factories, and the sound of construction filled the air as human engineering teams worked alongside former enemy soldiers to build a better future. General Robert Clark supervised the reconstruction efforts from a temporary command center that had once been a Zelthak military academy. At 60 years old, he was one of Earth's most experienced peacekeeping officers, and his job had shifted dramatically from conqueror to protector and teacher. "How are the integration programs going?" James asked as he reviewed the daily reports with General Clark. "Better than expected," Robert replied, pointing to charts showing education and employment statistics. "The Zelthak children are adapting remarkably well to the new school system. It turns out they're incredibly intelligent when they're not being trained as soldiers from birth. Many of them are showing real talent for engineering, medicine, and the arts." Captain Michael Hayes, who had survived the attack on New Bristol Colony, now worked as a liaison officer helping to establish the new planetary government. His left arm still bore scars from that terrible day, but his anger had transformed into something more constructive. He spent his days training former Zelthak military officers in democratic principles and civilian leadership. "The hardest part," Michael explained to a group of visiting diplomats, "is helping them understand that strength doesn't have to mean domination. They're learning that protecting people is more difficult than conquering them, but also more rewarding." High Commander Krax, who now went simply by the name Krax, worked in the Planetary Reconstruction Bureau alongside the humans who had defeated his forces. The massive Zelthak had been stripped of his military rank, but not his intelligence or his desire to serve his people. "I still don't completely understand," Krax admitted to Captain Hayes as they reviewed plans for a new medical complex. "You destroyed everything we built in just 3 months. You could have enslaved us, taken our resources, made us serve your empire. Why are you rebuilding everything better than it was before?" Captain Hayes looked up from the architectural drawings spread across their table. "Because that's what humans do, Krax. We don't fight to conquer or to get revenge. We fight to protect innocent people and to build something better than what existed before. Sometimes that means protecting people from their own bad leaders." The conversation was interrupted by excited voices from the street outside. Through the window, they could see Zelthak children running home from their new school, carrying art projects and homework assignments instead of weapons training equipment. Many of them had become friends with human children whose families had come to help with reconstruction efforts. Back on Earth, Admiral Rebecca Stone stood before the reformed Galactic Council in a chamber that had been completely redesigned. The old arrangement that placed species according to their military power had been replaced with a circular design where every voice carried equal weight. Humanity now held a permanent seat on the new Security Council, but not as rulers or conquerors. "The past 6 months have taught all of us important lessons," Admiral Stone addressed the assembled delegates. "The galaxy learned something about humanity that we had hoped never to demonstrate. But we learned something equally important about ourselves." Scholar Venth, whose research had helped the galaxy understand the truth about human nature, pulsed with curious light. "What did you learn, Admiral?" "We learned that strength without compassion is just brutality," Admiral Stone replied. "We held back for 3 years not because we feared war, but because we feared what we might become if we forgot why peace is worth protecting." The Thurian ambassador Gorth, whose people had always respected military prowess above all else, leaned forward in his chair. "You were protecting the galaxy from your own capabilities." "In a way, yes," Admiral Stone confirmed. "Earth's history is full of examples of what happens when our species fights without restraint. We've learned to be very careful about when and how we use our full capabilities." Ancient Keeper Tom Harrison stood to address the council, his aged voice carrying wisdom earned through millennia of observation. "What humanity has shown us is that true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the choice to protect and build instead." The vote that followed was unanimous. The Galactic Security Council was established with humanity serving as the primary peacekeeping force, but with strict oversight from representatives of every member species. Earth would serve as the galaxy's sword, but only when diplomatic solutions failed and innocent lives were at stake. Admiral Stone accepted the responsibility with the same gravity that James Mitchell had shown when delivering humanity's original warning months earlier. "We will carry this burden," she promised, "but we pray that our weapons will gather dust while diplomacy and cooperation flourish." Captain Jennifer Walsh, now promoted to Admiral and commanding the galaxy's new peacekeeping fleet, established training programs where human officers worked alongside aliens to learn when force was appropriate and when it was not. The goal was to create a military force that was powerful enough to deter aggression but wise enough to choose peace whenever possible. As the council session ended, delegates from hundreds of species filed out with a new understanding. Humanity had found its place in the galactic community not as conquerors seeking dominance, but as guardians ensuring that others could choose peace because someone else was strong enough to choose war when absolutely necessary. The human species had warned the galaxy they were holding back. Now everyone understood that this restraint had been the greatest gift humanity could offer to the stars. They had proven that sometimes the most peaceful people are those who truly understand the cost of war and choose to bear that burden so others don't have to. The galaxy was safer now, protected by those who knew the terrible price of victory and chose to pay it only when no other option remained to preserve the peace they all cherished.